Hey guys, tonight we wander the cobbled streets of ancient Rome, where the air hums with sizzling meat, shouting vendors, and the clatter of clay cups. Picture yourself elbowing through a sweaty crowd, your sandals sticking to the grime, chasing the scent of something cheap and filling. This isn't the Rome of marble statues or toga-clad senators, it's the gritty underbelly, where junk food wasn't just a meal but a way of life. Fair warning, you probably won't survive a week on this diet without praying for a time machine. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. It's always wild to see who's joining us across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the Subura, Rome's chaotic working-class district, where narrow alleys pulse with life under a hazy, smoke-filled sky. It's dusk, and torches flicker, casting shadows on stone walls scrawled with graffiti curses against tax collectors, boasts of love, or ads for the nearest wine shop. Your stomach growls, and the aroma of charred meat, sour bread, and a sharp, fishy tang pulls you toward a bustling street corner. This is where Rome's junk food scene thrived, in the open-air chaos of markets that never slept. Historians know these stalls as the lifeblood of urban Rome, feeding everyone from slaves toiling in workshops to merchants haggling over grain. The Roman poet Martial, in his sharp-tongued verses, called the Subura a place where grease and noise ruled, and you feel it now, the heat of wood fires, the sting of smoke in your eyes, and the chatter of 100 voices. These stalls aren't just food stops, they're the heartbeat of Rome's social world. You nudge past a butcher tossing scraps to a mangy dog, his hands slick with oil, while a woman in a patched tunic haggles over a loaf, her voice cutting through the din. The crowd's a tapestry, freedmen in rough wool, soldiers with wine-stained lips, and even a silk-clad noble sneaking a snack before a Senate meeting. The food is fast, cheap, and often a roll of the dice. A quirky tidbit, archaeologists found that many vendors cooked in lead-lined pots, which leached into meals, slowly poisoning the unaware. That guy next to you, swaying as he chews a skewer, might be feeling more than the heat. Historians still argue whether lead poisoning fueled Rome's decline or just made its people snappier at dinner. You pause at a stall where a vendor slaps flatbreads onto a sizzling griddle. These are panis vocacious, the ancestors of pizza, crispy and smeared with olive oil, herbs, or a dollop of garum, Rome's infamous fish sauce. You grab one, burning your fingers, and take a bite. It's chewy, slightly sour from barley flour, and dusted with ash from the fire. It's filling, but your modern stomach quails at the grit between your teeth. Nearby, a kid scarfs down fried dough balls, Rome's take on donut holes, drizzled with sticky honey and sprinkled with poppy seeds. Joke number 1. If you think this sounds tasty, wait till you meet the cook's been using the same apron since Caesar crossed the Rubicon. The markets here aren't just for eating, they're a spectacle. You watch a vendor juggle apples to draw a crowd, his grin as wide as the Tiber. Another hawks fresh sausages, but their grayish hue suggests they've been around longer than the Colosseum. The Subura's stalls fed Rome during its peak, when the city swelled to 1 million souls, a number unmatched in the ancient world. Food was survival, but also a unit for everyone, from plebs to patricians, grabbed a bite here. You lean against a wall, dodging a splash of spilled wine, and eat standing up, like most Romans. No tables, no forks, just your hands and a hunger to keep moving. Joke number 2. In Rome, fine dining means you didn't find a bone in your bread yet. The food's variety surprises you. Beyond flatbreads, there are lentils stewed with leeks, chickpeas fried crisp, and skewers of meat that could be pork, goat, or something else. You spot a woman selling pulse, a porridge of spelt wheat, scooped into clay bowls for pennies. It's the go-to for the poorest Romans, thick and bland but warm in the belly. The stalls also offer olives, pickled in brine, and cheese wheels hardened by months in smoky cellars. You try a sliver of cheese, its tang sharp enough to wake a gladiator, and wonder how anyone ate this daily. The answer lies in necessity. Rome's poor lived on what was cheap, and these stalls were their lifeline. But danger lurks in every bite. That lead pot simmering nearby might be flavoring your meal with a side of brain fog. You notice a vendor rinsing bowls in a bucket of murky water, and your stomach twists. Hygiene wasn't a Roman strong suit. Sewers ran open, and flies were as common as customers. Joke number 3. Forget food poisoning. In Rome, you're more likely to get a master's degree in. What's that smell? As you finish your flatbread, crumbs falling onto the cobblestones, you realize this scene is timeless. Swap the togas for t-shirts, and it's a modern food market, minus the health inspectors. The Subura's chaos fed Rome's soul, and the next stop a glowing Thermopolium promises even greasier delights. You push through the Subura's crowded alleys, the gritty aftertaste of that panis vocatus still clinging to your tongue, and a new scent grabs you, something savory, steaming, and faintly sour. You follow it to a narrow storefront, its counter wide open to the street, where a line of Romans jostles for a spot. This is a Thermopolium, ancient Rome's version of a diner, where workers, wanderers, and the weary grab hot meals faster than you can say. Past the Garum. These places are everywhere. Archaeologists uncovered over 80 in Pompeii alone, their marble counters lined with sunken clay jars called dolia, brimming with stews, lentils, or meat slurries that might have been pork, or not. You lean in, peering at the bubbling contents, and wonder if your modern stomach's ready for this gamble. The Thermopolium is a sensory assault, loud, chaotic, and reeking of roasted pork, stale wine, and sweat-soaked tunics. You squeeze onto a wobbly stool, elbow to elbow with a tanner who smells like leather, and a giggling teenager munching on briny olives. The counter's marble is stained with years of spills, and faded wall paintings advertise today's specials: lentil soup with cumin, boiled greens, or meat surprise. You're pretty sure the surprise isn't a pleasant one. The owner, a burly man in a grease-stained apron, ladles portions with a speed that'd put a modern drive-through to shame. This is Rome's grab-and-go at its peak, designed for a city where most folks lived in cramped tenements without kitchens. Historians point to Thermopolia as proof of Rome's urban hustle, feeding the masses who couldn't cook at home. The Roman writer Petronius, in his Satyricon, skewered these joints as greasy dens for greedy bellies, and you get it airs thick with oil, noise, and questionable aromas. You order a bowl of lentil stew, handed over in a chipped clay bowl that's seen better days. It's warm, thick with leeks and cumin, but there's a gritty crunch, maybe from barley mixed in to stretch the meal, or just plain dirt. You scoop it up with your fingers, wishing for a spoon, and notice the tanner dunking crusty bread into his own bowl, sauce dripping onto his beard. Thermopolia weren't just eateries. They were Rome's social stages. A group of dockworkers huddle in the corner, arguing over a dice game, their laughter drowning out a woman trading gossip with the owner about a senator's latest scandal. A quirky tidbit: some Thermopolia had menu boards scratched into the walls, listing prices in bronze coins, 2 asses for soup, for meat. You pat your imaginary coin pouch, hoping you brought enough. Historians still argue whether Thermopolia were respectable community hubs or seedy dives where trouble brewed alongside the stew. The food here is hearty but heavy, meant to fill bellies fast. You spot dolia holding stewed pork, spiced with costly pepper from India, and another with chickpeas swimming in olive oil, flecked with herbs. The owner swears the meat's fresh, but its grayish hue suggests it's been simmering since the last gladiator match. You stick to your lentils, though a whiff of Garum, Rome's pungent fish sauce, makes your eyes water. It's slathered on everything, like ancient ketchup, and you're not sold on its charm. Joke number 1. If Garum smell knocks you out, don't worry, you'll wake up sharing a stool with a guy who bathes in it. The crowd's a mix of togas and tunics, some crisp, others stained with sauce or soot. You overhear a soldier bragging about his latest campaign, his bowl of stew forgotten, and realize this Thermopolium is Rome in microcosmos, pretenders, and everyone in between. Eating here isn't without risks. You notice the owner rinsing bowls in a bucket of murky water, and flies buzz over an uncovered doleum. Hygiene was a Roman afterthought. Open sewers ran nearby, and clean water was a luxury. Those lead-lined pots you heard about in the Subura? They're here too, simmering away, possibly lacing your meal with a side of brain fog. Joke number 2. In Rome, fresh ingredients means the flies only checked in this morning. You take another bite, chewing cautiously, and spot a kid munching on fried dough balls from a side stall, honey dripping onto the counter. Thermopolia often doubled as snack bars, offering quick bites like these, pickled eggs, or hard-boiled chickpeas sold for a single coin. The Thermopolium's glow feels almost cozy, despite the chaos. You watch the owner juggle orders, barking at a boy to stoke the fire under the dolia. The place hums with live laughter, arguments, the clink of coins changing hands. It's a step up from the Subura's open stalls, offering a roof and a stool, but it's still fast food, meant for eating and moving on. You finish your stew, the bowl now cold, and wipe your hands on your tunic, blending in with the locals. Joke number 3. Forget Michelin stars. In a Thermopolium, you're thrilled if the stool doesn't collapse mid-bite. As you step back into the street, the crowd surges around you, and the scent of fresh baked bread wafts from another stall, pulling you deeper into Rome's endless food frenzy. But before you wander off, you notice the Thermopolium's walls, etched with more than menus. Graffiti here tells stories, names of lovers, complaints about prices, even a crude sketch of a gladiator. These scratches capture Rome's pulse, a city where food and talk fueled survival. You linger, watching a freedman pay for his meal with a handful of coins, his face lit by the fire's glow. Thermopolia weren't just about feeding bodies. They fed Rome's spirit, binding strangers in a shared hunger for life. You step away from the Thermopolium's steamy glow, the lentil stews sitting heavy in your stomach, and weave through the Subura's bustling crowd. The air shifts, carrying a warm, yeasty scent that cuts through the grease and smoke. You follow it to a small bakery, its open counter piled high with loaves, where a baker with flour-dusted arms slaps dough onto a stone oven's glowing hearth. This is the heart of Rome's diet bread, the people's staple. The one thing no Roman, rich or poor, could live without. From the humblest slave to the emperor himself, bread was life, and you're about to dive into the gritty, chewy world that kept Rome's million mouths fed. You grab a loaf, still warm, and settle against a wall to take it all in. The bakery hums with activity, a stark contrast to the Thermopolium's chaos. You watch the baker knead dough on a wooden table, his movements rhythmic, almost hypnotic. The air is thick with flour dust, catching the torchlight like tiny stars. Bread wasn't just food in Rome. It was a cultural cornerstone. Historians note that by the 1st century AD, Rome's government ran a massive grain dole, distributing free or subsidized wheat to over 200,000 citizens to keep the city from rioting. The poet Juvenal famously sneered that Romans cared only for bread and circuses, and you see why. Without bread, Rome's streets would have burned. You tear off a chunk of your loaf, a coarse panis plebeius made from barley and spelt, and chew. It's dense, gritty, and tastes like it's been milled with half the quarry. Bread's ubiquity made it Rome's ultimate junk food, cheap, filling, and everywhere. You spot a kid darting through the crowd, clutching a round libum, a flatbread smeared with honey, crumbs trailing behind him. Nearby, a soldier tears into a hard bucellatum, a biscuit-like loaf baked for long marches, dunking it in wine to soften it. The bakery's shelves hold variety: panis siligineus, a finer wheat bread for the wealthy; panis sordidus, the dirt-cheap stuff for the poor; and panis vocacious, the oily flatbread you tried in the Subura. A quirky tidbit: some bakers mix chalk or bone ash into cheap loaves to whiten them, fooling customers into thinking they were getting fancy bread. You check your loaf for suspicious whiteness, hoping you didn't just bite into a calcium supplement. Historians still argue whether this adulteration was widespread or just a trick of shady bakers looking to cut corners. You take another bite, the grit catching in your teeth, and watch the baker pull a fresh batch from the oven with a long wooden paddle. The process is grilling, kneading, proofing, baking in ovens that belch heat like a dragon's maw. Most Romans didn't bake at home. Tenement life meant no ovens, so bakeries like this were lifelines. You notice the baker's apprentice, a boy no older than 10, hauling sacks of grain from a cart outside. The grain's likely from Egypt, Rome's breadbasket, shipped across the Mediterranean in massive fleets. If those ships sank, Rome starved, a fact that kept emperors awake at night. You're struck by the scale. This little bakery, one of thousands, is part of a machine feeding a city larger than any in the ancient world. But bread wasn't just sustenance, it was social glue. You see a group of laborers sharing a loaf, passing it hand to hand, their laughter echoing. A woman in a faded shawl buys a small libum for her kids, who tear into it like it's a feast. Even the graffiti on the bakery's wall scratched names, crude jokes tells you bread was personal, a daily ritual binding Rome's masses. You spot a vendor across the street selling garum to drizzle over bread, and your nose wrinkles at the memory of its fishy sting. Joke number 1. If you think garum on bread sounds bad, try pairing it with a side of "What's in this stew?" from the Thermopolium. The risks of bread eating aren't small. You notice the baker's hands, rough and scarred, dusted with flour that's probably mixed with dust from the mill. Mills were notorious for grinding stones into the flour. Wearing down Roman teeth, archaeologists find ancient skulls with enamel ground to nubs. Those lead-lined pots you saw earlier? Some bakers used lead weights to measure dough, and traces might have snuck into your loaf. Joke number 2. In Rome, whole grain means you're chewing rocks, bugs, and a hint of heavy metal. You chew more carefully, hoping your teeth survive the meal. The bakery's rhythm feels timeless, like the Subura itself. You watch a freedman pay for his loaf with a bronze coin, the baker tossing it into a clay jar with a clink. The crowd surges around you, some heading to Thermopolia, others to stalls for meat or wine. Bread was the foundation of every meal, whether dunked in stew, smeared with oil, or eaten plain by those too poor for anything else. You finish your loaf, crumbs falling onto the cobblestones, and feel a strange kinship with the Romans around you. This bread, rough as it is, fueled an empire. Joke number 3. Forget gluten-free diets. In Rome, you're lucky if your bread's just gluten and not gravel. As you brush off your hands, the bakery's warmth lingers, but the street calls. The scent of something fishy, garum, of course, wafts from a nearby stall, promising a deeper dive into Rome's junk food obsession. You step away from the bakery, the coarse panis plebeius still heavy in your belly, and brush crumbs from your tunic as you weave through the Subura's bustling crowd. A sharp, salty whiff hits you, fishy, pungent, like a tide pool left in the sun too long. You follow it to a small stall where a vendor stirs a clay vat, its contents dark and glistening. This is garum, ancient Rome's favorite condiment, slathered on everything from bread to stew. The secret sauce that made junk food sing. You lean closer, your eyes watering from the stench, and wonder how anyone could love something that smells like a gladiator's sandal after a long fight. Garum was Rome's obsession, and you're about to dive into its salty, funky world. The stall is modest but busy, with customers crowding around, clutching loaves or bowls to douse with garum. The vendor, a wiry man with a crooked grin, ladles the stuff into small amphorae, his hands stained from years of fishy work. Garum wasn't just a flavor, it was a cultural phenomenon. Historians know it as Rome's most lucrative condiment, produced in factories along the Mediterranean coast. From Spain to North Africa, Pliny the Elder, in his Natural History, called garum the exquisite liquor of putrefied fish, which sounds like a backhanded compliment, but Romans couldn't get enough. You watch a woman drizzle it over her bread, her face lighting up, and you're torn between curiosity and nausea. Garum's made by fermenting fish, anchovies, mackerel, or whatever's cheap, layered with salt and vats under the sun for months. The result is a dark, syrupy liquid, strained and bottled like liquid gold. You sniff the vat, and the smell punches you, briny, umami, with a hint of regret. The vendor offers you a taste, dipping a sliver of bread into a bowl. You hesitate, then bite. It's intense, salty, savory, with a depth that makes your lentil stew from the Thermopolium seem bland. It's not bad, but your modern palate screams for a mint. Joke number 1. If garum's an acquired taste, you need a lifetime to acquire it, preferably someone else's. The variety here surprises you. The vendor boasts about his stock, garum sociorum, the premium stuff from Spain, clear and golden. garum floss, made from fish guts for extra punch, and liquamen, a cheaper blend for the penny pinching. Prices vary wildly. A small jar of top-shelf garum could cost as much as a soldier's monthly pay. You spot a wealthy matron buying a tiny amphora, her nose wrinkled but her purse open, while a laborer settles for a splash of the cheap stuff. Garum crossed class lines, uniting Rome's junk food scene. A quirky tidbit: some Romans used garum as medicine, rubbing it on wounds or drinking it for vigor. You eye the vat, wondering if vigor's worth the smell. Historians still argue whether garum's medicinal use was effective or just a placebo powered by sheer stench. You notice the stall's set of amphorae stacked high, sealed with wax to trap the aroma, though it still leaks out. The vendor's boy, barely tall enough to reach the counter, pours garum into a customer's jar, spilling a drop that makes you gag. Garum factories were big business, often run by freedmen who struck it rich. Archaeologists found vats in Pompeii with fish bones still inside, proof of the scale. Thousands of gallons fermented yearly. Shipped across the empire, you imagine the ports of Ostia, reeking of fish sauce, as ships carried garum to Britain's rainy shores or Egypt's deserts. It's wild to think this smelly sauce was Rome's global export, like ketchup today but with more personality. But garum wasn't without risks. You watch the vendor stir the vat with a wooden paddle, and a fly lands on the rim, unnoticed. Fermentation wasn't exactly sterile. Bad batches could sicken entire neighborhoods. Those lead-lined amphorae you've heard about. Some garum was stored in them, possibly adding a toxic kick. You take another nibble of your garum-dipped bread, chewing cautiously, and hope you're not sampling heavy metal. Joke number 2, in Rome. Farm to table means fish to vat to stomachache, no questions asked. You notice the crowd's enthusiasm: soldiers, slaves, even a priest in white robes, all splashing garum like it's holy water. It's the glue of Rome's food scene, turning stale bread or watery stew into something craveable. The stall's a microcosm of Rome's hustle. You overhear a merchant haggling, offering to trade wine for garum, while a kid sneaks a lick from an unguarded bowl, grimacing but going back for more. Graffiti on the wall boasts, "Best garum in Subura," though you spot a scratched-out insult calling it sewer juice. You laugh, realizing garum's divisive even here. The vendor catches your eye, offering a discount if you buy now, but you're not ready to commit to a jar of fishy regret. Instead, you watch the crowd flow, some heading to bakeries, others to Thermopolia, all chasing the next bite. Garum's everywhere, in bread, in stews, even drizzled over fried dough balls like the ones you saw earlier. The Subura's chaos swirls around you, but the garum stall feels like a strange anchor. You take one last bite of your bread, the sauce's tang lingering, and realize garum's more than a condiment. It's Rome's spirit, bold and unapologetic. Joke number 3, forget love. In Rome, garum's the universal language, spoken with every stinky bite. As you step back into the street, the scent of sizzling meat wafts from a nearby stall, promising a new chapter in Rome's junk food saga. You slip away from the garum stall, the fishy tang still prickling your tongue, and dive back into the Subura's pulsing crowd. A new smell hooks you: smoky, meaty, with a whiff of charred fat that makes your mouth water despite the garum's lingering assault. You follow it to a street vendor's brazier, where skewers sizzle over glowing coals, spitting sparks into the dusk. This is Rome's street meat scene, the heart of its junk food allure, where hunks of flesh, pork, goat, or something less identifiable are grilled and sold for a coin or two. You grab a skewer, its heat seeping through the stick, and brace for a bite that's equal parts delight and mystery. Meat was Rome's guilty pleasure, and you're about to taste why. The stall's a hive of activity, with customers crowding around the vendor, a wiry man with soot-streaked arms who flips skewers with practiced ease. The brazier's flames cast a glow on faces: laborers, soldiers, even a giggling kid eyeing the meat like it's gold. Meat wasn't cheap in Rome. Most folks lived on bread and lentils, making these skewers a treat. Historians know that Rome's meat supply leaned on pigs, raised in pens outside the city. But butchers often stretched their stock with whatever wandered too close. The Roman satirist Apicius, in his cookbook, lists recipes for dormice and flamingo tongues, hinting at the elite's wild tastes. But here in the Subura, it's simple pork, maybe goat, or don't ask. You bite into your skewer, the meat juicy but chewy, spiced with pepper and herbs. It's good, but you're not sure what animal you're thanking. The vendor sprinkles garum over a fresh batch, the sauce hissing on the hot meat, and you wince, still recovering from your last encounter with it. Street meat was Rome's fast food flex, quick, portable, and packed with flavor. You spot skewers of sausage stuffed with fennel and garlic, and isisha, minced meat patties shaped like tiny burgers, sizzling beside the coals. Some vendors sell lucanike, smoked sausages looped over sticks. Their spicy kick a favorite among soldiers. A quirky tidbit. Archaeologists found Pompeii stalls with meat scraps fossilized in ash, showing vendors often used offal hearts, livers, lungs to pad their offerings. You choose slower, wondering if your skewer's hiding a surprise organ. Historians still argue whether offal was a delicacy or just a way to scam hungry customers. You lean against the wall, dodging a splash of grease from the brazier, and watch the crowd. A dockworker tears into a sausage sauce dripping down his tunic, while a woman haggles for a cheaper skewer, her kids tugging at her shawl. Meat stalls like this were social magnets, drawing Romans to gossip, flirt, or argue over who got the juiciest cut. The vendor's boy, barely tall enough to fan the coals, darts between customers, collecting coins in a clay cup. You notice the meat's grilled over olive wood, giving it a smoky edge, but the vendor's fresh, clean feels shaky. Flies buzz around a pile of raw cuts, and the Subura's open sewers aren't far off. Joke number 1. If you think the meat's fresh, you haven't met the pig it wasn't. Eating street meat wasn't just a meal, it was a gamble. You spot a lead pan catching drippings under the brazier, and your stomach twists, recalling those toxic pots from the Thermopolium. Hygiene was a Roman afterthought. Vendors rinsed skewers in murky water, and rats weren't shy about joining the feast. You take another bite, savoring the spice but scanning for grit or worse. Meat was pricier than bread, so vendors cut corners, mixing in fat or gristle to stretch portions. You overhear a soldier grumble about a tough skewer, joking it's half meal, and you hope he's kidding. The Subura's meat scene thrived on trust or desperation. The stall's rhythm is hypnotic: flip, sizzle, serve, repeat. You watch the vendor toss a scrap to a stray dog, who gulps it down, tail wagging. Meat was a status symbol, even in junk food form. Wealthy Romans ate whole roasted boars at banquets, but here, a skewer was as close as most got to that dream. You notice graffiti scratched into the wall. Titus loves Lucia. Next to a crude pig drawing. It's a snapshot of Rome: love, meat, and mischief, all in one place. Joke number 2. In Rome, a romantic date means sharing a skewer and hoping it's not goat intestine. The crowd ebbs and flows, some heading to bakeries for bread to pair with their meat, others to Thermopolia for stew. You finish your skewer, licking grease from your fingers, and feel the Subura's pulse. Meat stalls fed Rome's hunger for flavor and connection, turning a quick bite into a shared ritual. You spot a vendor across the street selling honey-drizzled treats, their sweetness calling you away from the smoky brazier. Joke number 3. Forget dessert menus. In Rome, you follow the honey to find your next craving. As you move on, the sizzle of meat fades, but the Subura's junk food saga burns brighter than ever. You drift away from the meat stall, the smoky spice of your skewer still tingling on your lips, and weave through the Subura's restless crowd. A new scent catches you, sweet, warm, like a promise of comfort in this gritty chaos. You follow it to a small stand where a woman drizzles golden honey over stacks of pastries, their surfaces glistening under torchlight. This is Rome's sweet side, where sugary treats turn junk food into joy for kids, lovers, and anyone with a coin to spare. You grab a honey-soaked morsel, its stickiness coating your fingers, and settle into the crowd to savor the sugary escape that Romans craved. Sweets were rare in Rome's diet, but when they appeared, they stole the show, and you're about to taste why. The stall is a magnet for the Subura's night owls, kids tugging at parents' tunics, soldiers on leave, and a giggling couple sharing a pastry, honey smearing their chins. The vendor, a plump woman with quick hands, shapes dough into small rounds, fries them crisp, and dunks them in honey syrup scented with cinnamon. These are globuli, Rome's answer to donut holes, crispy outside, soft within, and dangerously addictive. You bite into yours, the crunch giving way to a burst of sweetness, though a stray grain of sand from the flour catches in your teeth. Sweets weren't everyday fare, sugar was unknown, and honey was pricey, but they were Rome's ultimate junk food indulgence. Historians know that honey came from apiaries in Italy's hills, a costly import for urban stalls. The Roman poet Ovid, in his Ars Amatoria, teased lovers for wooing with honeyed cakes. And you see why our pastry's practically a love potion. The variety here is modest but tempting. You spot scribletta, flat cakes studded with nuts and drizzled with honey, and placenta, a layered pastry of cheese and honey that looks like a proto-cheesecake. Some treats are sprinkled with poppy seeds or sesame, adding a nutty crunch. The vendor offers dulcia, tiny fried balls soaked in wine-sweetened honey, which a kid nearby devours like their gold. A quirky tidbit. Some Romans believed honey had divine powers, using it in rituals to appease gods or even as a preservative for corpses. You glance at your sticky fingers, hoping your globuli skip the embalming batch. Historians still argue whether honey's sacred status made it a luxury or just inflated its price for suckers like you. You lean against the wall, licking honey from your thumb, and watch the stall's rhythm. The vendor's daughter, barely tall enough to reach the counter, stacks pastries while dodging a stray dog sniffing for scraps. The crowd's a mixed freedmen, slaves, even a toga-clad noble slumming it for a sweet fix. Sweets were democratic, uniting Rome's junk food scene in a way bread or meat couldn't. You notice the vendor heating honey in a bronze pot, its steam mingling with the Subura's smoky air. The pots, probably lead-lined, like those you've seen before, and you wonder if your treats got a toxic kick. Hygiene's no better here. Flies buzz over the pastries, and the vendor swats them with a rag that's seen better days. Eating sweets is a messy affair. You juggle your globuli, honey dripping onto your tunic, and laugh as a soldier nearby curses a sticky smear on his cloak. Stalls like this were social hubs, where Romans lingered longer than at meat or bread stands. You overhear a woman gossiping about a neighbor's scandal, her pastry half-eaten, while two kids play tag, dodging customers. Graffiti on the wall reads, "Sweetest dulcia in Rome," though a scratched-out curse calls the vendor a cheat. Joke number 1. If you think honey's sticky, try getting caught in Subura gossip. It's sweeter and harder to escape. The risks of sweets aren't just sticky fingers. You notice the vendor's flour sack, likely milled with stones that grind grit into the dough. Roman teeth, worn down by such flour, tell a grim story in archaeological digs. Honey might mask bad ingredients, stale dough, rancid nuts, or worse. You take another bite, savoring the cinnamon but scanning for surprises. The Subura's open sewers and roaming rats don't inspire confidence. And you hope the vendor's rag didn't double as a mop. Joke number 2. In Rome, fresh pastries means the flies haven't filed for citizenship yet. The stall's warmth feels like a hug, despite the chaos. You watch the vendor haggle with a customer, her laugh echoing as she tosses in an extra dulcia for charm. Sweets were a rare treat, often tied to festivals or bribes. Parents calmed kids, lovers wooed partners, and politicians bought votes with them. You spot a man buying a stack of scribletta for his family, his smile brighter than the torches. This stall, like the Thermopolium or bakery, feeds Rome's soul, turning hunger into moments of joy. You finish your globuli, licking the last honey drop, and feel a sugar buzz that's almost worth the grit. As you step back into the street, the Subura's din swallows you. Shouts, laughter, the sizzle of meat. The honey's sweetness lingers, but a sharper scent, wine, cheap and sour, drifts from a nearby tavern, pulling you toward Rome's next junk food adventure. Joke number 3. Forget sugar highs. In Rome, honey's the only thing sweeter than a good deal on garum. You wander from the pastry stall, the honey's sweetness still clinging to your fingers, and merge back into the Subura's swirling crowd. A sharp, tangy scent cuts through the sugary haze, sour, fruity, with a boozy edge that promises a different kind of escape. You follow it to a cramped tavern, its doorway spilling torchlight and laughter onto the cobblestones. Inside, Romans clutch clay cups brimming with wine, the lifeblood of their junk food feasts. This is Rome's liquid lunch, the cheap, watered down vino that fueled workers, soldiers, and dreamers through long days and rowdy nights. You snag a cup, its contents sloshing, and settle against a wall to sip the drink that kept Rome's streets buzzing. The tavern's a chaotic blur, loud, smoky, and reeking of wine, sweat, and spilled garum from a nearby bowl. You squeeze past the table where dockworkers swap stories, their voices slurred, and find a spot near the counter. The tavern keeper, a gruff woman with a scar across her cheek, pours wine from a massive amphora, diluting it with water from a chipped jug. Wine in Rome wasn't sipped neat. It was mixed. Often 2 parts water to 1 part wine, to stretch it and keep folks from passing out mid-meal. Historians know wine as Rome's social lubricant, consumed daily by every class. The Roman poet Horace, in his odes, praised wine's ability to unlock tongues and loosen cares. And you feel it now. A tavern's roar is louder than the Subura's streets. You take a sip, the wine sharp and slightly vinegary, with a watery aftertaste that's more practical than pleasant. It's Pascha, the cheap stuff favored by soldiers and laborers, sometimes spiked with herbs or vinegar for kick. Your modern palate winces, but the dockworker next to you downs his cup like it's nectar. Wine was Rome's go-to drink, paired with bread, meat, or those honeyed globuli you just ate. Taverns like this were everywhere. Archaeologists found hundreds in Rome, from hole-in-the-wall dives to fancy papyri with mosaic floors. A quirky tidbit: some taverns served wine in lead-glazed cups, which leached poison into the drink, adding a slow, silent risk to every gulp. You eye your cup, hoping it's plain clay. Historians still argue whether lead poisoning from wine and food sparked Rome's decline or just gave its drunks an extra wobble. The tavern's menu is simple but tempting. You spot bowls of lentils, skewers of sausage, and crusty bread for dipping in wine-soaked garum. The keeper offers mulsum, a sweet wine mixed with honey, popular with wealthier patrons. But you stick to your Pascha, it's cheaper, and you're blending in. The crowd's a mix: laborers in rough tunics, a soldier boasting about his latest sprawl, and a woman in a faded shawl nursing her cup, her eyes on the dice game in the corner. Taverns were Rome's junk food hubs, where food and drink merged into a quick social ritual. You overhear a man complain about the wine's horse piss taste, but he orders another round, proving Horace's point. Drinking here is a gamble. You notice the keeper rinsing cups in a bucket of murky water, and flies buzz over a spilled puddle of wine. Those lead-glazed amphorae storing the wine? They're as risky as the pots in the Thermopolium. You sip cautiously, the sourness cutting through the honey you ate earlier. Wine was often adulterated. Vendors mixed in chalk or herbs to mask spoilage, or worse, added lead syrup for sweetness. You hope your Pascha skipped the toxic sweetener, but the dockworker's dazed grin isn't reassuring. Joke number 1: if the wine doesn't knock you out, the lead in it might send you to the gods early. The tavern's walls tell stories. Graffiti scratches out bets, insults, and a crude drawing of a chariot race. You spot: Lucius owes 3 asses for wine, and laugh, imagining the debts still unpaid. Taverns were Rome's social glue, where gossip, deals, and fights brewed alongside the wine. You watch a freedman haggle with the keeper, trading a loaf for a refill, while 2 kids sneak sips from an unguarded cup, giggling until they're caught. The Subura's chaos seeps in shouts from a nearby meat stall, the clatter of a dropped amphora, but the tavern feels like a world apart, fueled by wine and hunger. Wine's role went beyond taverns. You recall the grain dole from the bakery, but wine was just as vital, distributed at festivals to keep the masses happy. Emperors knew a sober Rome was a riotous one, so they kept the vats flowing. You take another sip, the Pascha growing on you, though your stomach gurgles, maybe from the wine or that gritty bread. Joke number 2: in Rome, happy hour means you're still standing after 3 cups of this stuff. The soldier nearby starts a drinking song, his voice off-key but infectious, and the crowd joins in, cups raised. You finish your wine, the cups drag sour but warming. The tavern's glow wraps you like a blanket, despite the flies and noise. You wipe your mouth, blending into the crowd, and realize wine wasn't just a drink, it was Rome's pulse, pairing with every junk food bite from bread to sweets. As you step toward the door, the scent of sizzling meat wafts from the street, but you're drawn to the crowd's flow, where Rome's on-the-go eating habits come alive. Joke number 3: forget designated drivers. In Rome, you just stumble home with a loaf and a prayer. You stumble out of the tavern, the sour tang of Pascha lingering on your tongue, and plunge back into the Subura's chaotic streets. The wine's buzz softens the crowd's roar, but hunger nudges you forward, your eyes scanning for the next bite. You're swept along by Romans eating on the move, munching bread, gnawing skewers, or licking honey from sticky fingers. This is Rome's true junk food rhythm, eating while walking, dodging carts, and shouting over the din.no tables, no lingering, just you, your snack, and the city's relentless pulse. You grab a handful of fried chickpeas from a passing vendor, their crunch warm in your palm, and join the flow, tasting the life of a Roman on the go. The Subura's streets are a living buffet, where food is as mobile as the people. You sidestep a cart piled with loaves, its driver barking prices, while a woman balances a bowl of lentils, spooning it up without breaking stride. Eating on the move was Rome's norm. Most folks lived in cramped tenements with no kitchens, so streets became dining rooms. Historians note that Rome's urban density, with 1 million souls packed into tight quarters, made street food a necessity. The Roman writer Seneca, in his letters, grumbled about the endless clatter of vendors, selling snacks day and night, and you feel it now. Every corner hums with food, from garum-soaked bread to sizzling sausages. You pop a chickpea, its salty crunch cutting through the wine's aftertaste, and dodge a splash of spilled wine from a passing drunk. The crowd's a mix, laborers rushing to night shifts, soldiers weaving toward taverns, and kids darting between legs, clutching stolen globuli. Food's everywhere. A man gnaws a sausage skewer, grease shining on his chin. A woman tears a loaf, sharing it with her friend mid-gossip. These snacks are cheap, portable, and meant for survival. A quirky tidbit. Some Romans carried saccus gustatorius, small pouches for stashing snacks, like ancient lunch bags. You pat your imaginary pouch, wishing you'd saved some of those honey pastries. Historians still argue whether these pouches were common or just a fad among the snack-obsessed. The street's chaos is a dance. Vendors shout, customers haggle, and carts rattle over cobblestones. You pass a stall selling isisha, minced meat patties you saw at the meat stand, now wrapped in flatbread for easy carrying. You grab one, the patty warm and spicy, but a gristly bit makes you pause. Street food's a gamble. Vendors stretch ingredients with fat, gristle, or worse. Those lead-lined pots from the Thermopolium haunt you. Some vendors use them to fry snacks, possibly lacing your chickpeas with a toxic crunch. You chew carefully, scanning for flies or suspicious grit. Joke number 1. In Rome, fast food means you're racing to eat before the rats claim it. Eating on the go isn't just practical, it's social. You overhear a group of laborers joking about their foreman, passing a loaf hand to hand as they walk. A soldier offers a bite of his sausage to a flirting woman, her laugh echoing. Food binds Rome's streets, turning strangers into fleeting friends. You notice graffiti on a wall. Eat here, live long, though a scratched-out curse calls the vendor a thief. The Subura's food scene thrives on trust, or maybe just hunger. You pop another chickpea, its warmth fading, and dodge a cartwheel that nearly clips your sandal. The streets of obstacle course, puddles, dogs, and drunks keep you alert. The risks are real. You spot a vendor rinsing bowls in a ditch, the water murkier than the Tiber. Flies swarm an uncovered pile of bread, and the stench of open sewers mingles with sizzling meat. Hygiene's a distant dream. Romans ate where they stood, crumbs falling to the stones, where rats and dogs scavenged. Your isisha tastes good, but you wonder what's in it: pork, goat, or that mystery meat from the brazier? Lead's not the only worry. Bad food could mean a night praying to the gods for mercy. Joke number 2. In Rome, street food means you're one bite away from a stomachache or a sermon. The Subura's rhythm pulls you along. You pass a Thermopolium, its dolia steaming, and a bakery with fresh loaves stacked high. Vendors hawk olives, cheese, and pickled eggs, their cries blending into a chaotic symphony. You finish your chickpeas, licking salt from your fingers, and feel like a true Roman, hungry, hurried, and alive. Street eating was Rome's pulse, fueling workers who built aqueducts, soldiers who guarded walls, and dreamers who chased glory. You spot a man selling wine-soaked bread, a nod to the tavern's Pascha, and smile at the city's endless food loop. As you move deeper into the crowd, the Subura's glow feels like home, despite the grime. You realize eating on the go wasn't just survival, it was Rome's spirit, shared in every hurried bite. Joke number 3. Forget dining etiquette. In Rome, you're a pro if you eat without tripping over a drunk. The scent of lentils wafts from a nearby stall, hinting at the poor man's diet you're about to explore. You weave through the Subura's crowded streets, the salty crunch of chickpeas fading on your tongue, and feel the city's pulse in every hurried step. The glow of torches and the shouts of vendors surround you, but your gaze falls on a hunched figure leaning against a wall, clutching a cracked bowl of porridge. This is the world of Rome's poor, where junk food wasn't a treat but a lifeline, scraped together from scraps and grit. You pause, joining a cluster of weary faces around a vendor ladling out pulse, a watery spelt gruel that's the backbone of the underclass diet. You accept a bowl, its warmth faint in your hands, and dive into the meager meals that kept Rome's forgotten millions alive. The scene is quieter here, less chaotic than the Thermopolium or meat stalls, but heavy with resignation. You stand among laborers in patched tunics, slaves with calloused hands, and widows with hollow eyes, all spooning up pulse in silence. The vendor, an old man with a limp, stirs a blackened pot over a smoldering fire, his face etched with years of Subura grime. Pulse was Rome's cheapest food, made from spelt wheat boiled into a thin mush, sometimes flecked with leeks or a dribble of oil if you were lucky. Historians know it as the staple of Rome's poor, who relied on the grain dough-free wheat distributed by the state to prevent riots. The Roman writer Plautus, in his comedies, mocked pulse as food for pigs and plebs, and you get why your bowl's bland, gritty, and barely fills the void. You scoop a spoonful, the porridge lukewarm and gluey, with a faint bitterness from stale grain. It's not awful, just joyless, like eating a sigh. The crowd around you eats quickly, some using bread crusts to scrape their bowls, others licking fingers to catch every drop. The poor man's diet was pulse, stale bread, and whatever scraps they could scrounge, wilted greens, fish heads, or bones boiled for broth. A quirky tidbit: some Romans added ashes from their hearths to pulse to stretch it, believing it added strength. You taste a chalky note in your bowl and hope it's not fireplace leftovers. Historians still argue whether such additives were common or a desperate last resort for the starving. The vendor's pot is nearly empty, but the line doesn't shrink. Hunger outpaces supply in the Subura. You notice a boy, no older than 8, clutching a bowl for his family, his eyes darting to avoid bigger kids who might steal it. Rome's poor lived on the edge, their meals dictated by what the dole provided or what they could barter. You spot a woman trading a worn sandal for a handful of chickpeas, her face unreadable. The grain dole, started under the Republic, was a lifeline, but not enough. Many sold their share for coins to buy wine or meat, leaving them hungrier. Your pulse feels heavier now, each bite a reminder of Rome's stark divides. Eating here is a grim ritual. You stand in the street, no stools or tables, dodging a stray dog sniffing for spills. The Subura's chaos swirls, meat sizzles nearby. A tavern song drifts over, but this corner feels apart, shadowed by need. Hygiene's a lost cause. The vendor's pot hasn't been scrubbed in years, and flies land on your bowl, undeterred by your swatting. Those lead-lined pots you've seen before? Some pulse was cooked in them, adding a silent poison to already meager meals. You eat slowly, scanning for grit or worse, and wonder how anyone survived this diet. Joke number 1. In Rome, budget dining means you're eating dirt and hoping it's nutritious. The poor man's diet wasn't just pulse. You see a man gnawing a bone, picked clean of meat, likely scavenged from a butcher's scraps. Another chews wilted cabbage, its stench sharp enough to clear the street. Olives, too briny to sell at market, or cheese rinds too hard for wealthier tables, were poor man's staples. You spot graffiti nearby. Bread or death. A raw plea from a city where hunger sparked revolts. The Subura's poor ate to survive, not to savor, their meals a daily grind of necessity. Yet there's resilience here. You watch a group share a single bowl, passing it hand to hand, their quiet chatter a flicker of defiance. A woman hums a tune, her bowl empty, and you realize food, even pulse, binds these people. The vendor tosses a scrap of bread to the boy, who grins like it's a feast. Rome's poor clung to life through these meals, their hunger fueling the city's labor, building aqueducts, cleaning streets, serving the rich. Joke number 2, forget 5-course meals. In Rome, the poor's menu is pulse, prayers, and a side of grit. You finish your porridge, the bowl's dregs cold and gluey. You wipe your hands on your tunic, blending into the crowd, and feel the weight of survival. The Subura's glow dims here, but the poor's quiet strength shines through. As you move on, the scent of roasted meat wafts from a stall, hinting at the elite's feast you're about to contrast. Joke number 3, in Rome, the poor eat pulse, but the rich? They're dining on dreams and dormice. You leave the pulse vendor's somber corner, the porridge's bland weight settling in your stomach, and drift back into the Subura's vibrant chaos. The crowd surges around you, their voices a mix of laughter and haggling, and your eyes catch a glimpse of a finer tunic silk, not wool slipping into a grander stall lit by bronze lamps. This is where Rome's elite snatch their snacks, a world apart from the poor man's gruel. Where junk food becomes a flaunt of wealth. You follow, brushing past the Suburas. Grit, and step into a space where delicacies like stuffed dormice and spiced peacock tongues tempt the rich, while plebs like you gawk. You grab a small, overpriced olive, its brine sharp on your tongue, and settle in to compare the elite's treats with the Subura's humble grub. The stall's a spectacle, less chaotic than the Thermopolium but dripping with status. Polished counters gleam under lamplight, and the vendor, a sleek man in a crisp tunic, serves customers with a practiced smile. You're surrounded by Rome's upper-crust senators' wives, merchants flush with coin, and a young noble flashing a gold ring. The air smells of exotic spices, cinnamon, saffron, pepper from India's far shores out the garum-soaked haze of the Subura streets. Elite snacks weren't just food. They were power. Historians know that Rome's rich used lavish feasts to flex their wealth, as documented in Apicius's De Re Coquinaria, a cookbook packed with absurd dishes like flamingo stew. Here, the snacks are tamer but still scream, "I'm better than you." You pop your olive, its tang a far cry from the pulse you just choked down, and skin the offerings. There's gliaries, dormice stuffed with nuts and herbs, glazed with honey and rolled in poppy seeds. Think fancy meatballs with a side of why? You spot padini, small tarts filled with minced fish or fruit, and ovaspangia, eggs whipped with milk and fried, drizzled with costly mulsum. The vendor hawks locanicae, sausages laced with rare spices, pricier than the Subura's greasy links. A quirky tidbit, elite Romans sometimes ate garum nobile, a clear, refined fish sauce made from premium fish, unlike the stinky stuff you tried earlier. You sniff a jar. It's scent less punchy, and wonder if it's worth the senator's ransom. Historians still argue whether such delicacies were truly tastier or just a status grab for snobs. The crowd here moves slower, savoring each bite like a performance. You watch a matron nibble a dormouse, her fingers dainty, while her servant fans her with a palm leaf. A merchant brags about his trade in Indian pepper, popping a tart with a smug grin. These snacks cost more than a laborer's daily wage, yet they're still junk food, quick, indulgent, meant to impress. You compare them to the Subura's fare, panis vocacious versus padini. Garum versus garum nobile, pulse versus anything here. The poor ate to survive, the rich ate to shine. You feel out of place, your olive a cheap ticket to this world, but the vendor's smile says your coin's as good as anyone's. The risks aren't absent, even here. You notice a lead glazed tray holding tarts, and your stomach twists, recalling the toxic pots from the Thermopolium. Hygiene's better servants whisk away crumbs, and flies are fewer, but the Subura's open sewers still lurk nearby. The vendor's spices might mask spoiled fish or rancid nuts, and you wonder if wealth buys safety or just fancier regrets. Joke number 1. In Rome, the rich eat dormice, the poor eat dir. Guess which one's safer? You take another olive, its brine waking you up, and dodge a servant balancing a tray of ovaspangia, nearly spilling it. This stall's a social stage, like the tavern but with airs. You overhear a noblewoman gossip about a rival's banquet, her tart uneaten, while two merchants seal a deal over sausages. Graffiti's absent here, too classy, but you spot a carved peacock on the counter, a nod to the elite's obsession with exotic birds. The vendor's boy, dressed better than Subura kids, polishes amphory, his eyes on the coins piling up. Wealthy Romans snacked here to be seen, their treats a public flex. You recall the pulse. Vendors hollow-eyed crowd and feel the gap, same city, different worlds. The elite's snacks weren't just for stalls. You imagine villas where these treats graced banquets, served on silver to awed guests. But here, in the Subura, the rich slummet, craving the street's energy. You finish your olive, the pit hard in your mouth, and realize these delicacies, like globuli or skewers, are Rome's junk food so fast, shared, human. Joke number 2, forget fine dining, in Rome. Even senators grab snacks with sticky fingers. The vendor offers a dormouse, but you pass your wallet. And stomach aren't that brave. As you step back into the Subura, the stall's glow fades, and the crowd pulls you along. The scent of lentils wafts from a nearby Thermopolium, but your mind's on the health risks of Rome's greasy, lead-laced junk food, lurking in every bite. Joke number 3, in Rome, the rich eat gold-plated snacks, but the poor's pulse might outlast them all. You slip away from the elite's polished stall, the olive's sharp brine still dancing on your tongue, and plunge back into the Subura's gritty flow. The crowd jostles you, their tunics stained with garum and wine, and the familiar smells of bread, meat, and honey swirl around. But as you pop another olive, a twinge in your gut reminds you that Rome's junk food comes with a price estimate: shakes, sour burps. And worse, you're now wading into the health risks of this greasy, lead-laced diet, where every bite of pulse, skewer, or globuli could be a gamble with your insides. You pause near a Thermopolium, its steaming dully tempting but ominous, and brace for the digestive perils that haunted Rome's street eaters. The Subura's chaos feels heavier now, as you notice a man doubled over near a stall, clutching his stomach after a bowl of stew. Rome's junk food was cheap and filling, but it wasn't kind to the body. Historians know that poor diet and sanitation made illness common in Rome, with texts like Celsus's De Medicina describing ailments from bad food, diarrhea, bloating, even parasitic worms. You eye your olive, wondering if it's safe, and scan the Thermopolium's counter, where flies buzz over uncovered lentils. The vendor ladles stew with a grimy hand, and you realize hygiene was Rome's weakest link. Open sewers snake through the Subura, their stench mingling with sizzling meat, and water for rinsing bowls is often pulled from polluted wells. You recall the lead-lined pots from the bakery and tavern, now spotting one simmering here, its contents bubbling with a faint metallic sheen. Lead was everywhere: cooking pots, wine cups, even garum amphory leaching into food and drink. A quirky tidbit: some Romans sweetened wine with sapa, a syrup boiled in lead vats, which added a toxic kick. You shudder, thinking of the pasca you sipped earlier, and hope it wasn't laced with that stuff. Historians still argue whether lead poisoning caused Rome's decline, weakening minds and bodies, or if it just made the Subura's drunks dizzier. Either way, your gut's warning you to tread lightly. The food itself was a minefield. You pass a meat stall, its skewers glistening but grayish, likely stretched with offal or left too long in the heat. Spoilage was rampant: vendors massed rancid meat with garum or spices, and bread like your panis plebeius often hid mold under its crust. Pulse, the poor's staple, was cooked in dirty pots, sometimes with stale grain crawling with weevils. You remember the gritty globuli and wonder if sand or worse was baked in. Parasites were a silent plague. Archaeologists find tapeworm eggs in Roman latrines, proof that undercooked pork or bad water haunted eaters. You rub your stomach, half expecting a rumble, and dodge a splash of murky water from a vendor's bucket. Joke number 1. In Rome, a stomachache's just the appetizer. Dessert's a week of regrets. The Subura's eaters seem unfazed, scarfing skewers and stew as if illness is just another Tuesday. You watch a laborer dunk bread in garum, crumbs falling to the stones, where a rat snatches them. A woman slurps pulse, her kids sharing the bowl, their fingers sticky with grime. Rome's poor had no choice: hunger trumped caution. Wealthier Romans weren't immune. Those dormice from the elite stall, stuffed with nuts, could carry bacteria if poorly cooked. Even garum nobile spoiled in the heat, turning a senator's snack into a trip to the healer. You spot a man selling Cures, herbs, vinegar, even garum as medicine, but his shifty grin doesn't inspire trust. The environment didn't help. You weave past an open sewer, its stench a punch to the nose, and notice flies hopping from waste to a nearby bread pile. Water was a Gamblewell's near latrines bred disease, and boiling wasn't common. You recall Celsus's advice: eat sparingly, avoid rich foods. Good luck with that in the Subura, where every stall tempts you with grease and spice. Your olive feels like a safe bet. But even that could have been pickled in bad brine. Joke number 2, in Rome. Farm fresh means the flies got first dibs. Despite the risks, Rome's junk food scene thrives. You watch a soldier gulp wine, a kid munch globuli, and a vendor hawk sausages, all undeterred by the odds. Food was life, even if it shortened it. Graffiti on a wall reads, "Eat now, pray later." Summing up the Subura's mantra, you pass a Thermopolium, its dolia steaming, and a bakery with loaves stacked high. The crowd's resilience is writing wasn't just survival. It was defiance against the city that chewed up the weak. You toss your olive pit, feeling a pang of respect for these Romans, who faced every meal like a battle. As you move deeper into the Subura, the health risks fade into the city's glow. The scent of roasting meat and honey drifts from a festival stall, pulling you toward the chaotic feasts that defined Rome's wildest nights. Joke number 3, forget food safety. In Rome, you're winning if your lunch doesn't fight back. You push through the Subura's gritty streets, the olive's sharp tang fading as the city's pulse quickens around you. A sudden roar of laughter and clinking cups draws you toward a wide plaza, ablaze with torches and bursting with life. Stalls overflow with sizzling meat, steaming pulse, and honey-drizzled globuli, while Romans dance, shout, and feast under a starlit sky. This is a festival in full swing. Rome's wild, chaotic celebrations where junk food fuels the frenzy. You grab a skewer of sausage, its grease warm in your hand, and dive into the Subura's loudest night, where food becomes a shared riot of joy and excess. The plaza's a whirlwind of color and noise. Vendors hawk snacks, musicians pluck lyres, and jugglers toss apples to cheers. You're swept into a crowd of togas and tunics, some pristine, others stained with wine and garum. Festivals like Saturnalia or Lupercalia turned Rome upside down, with slaves dining beside masters and the poor feasting like kings. Historians know these events as Rome's pressure valves, keeping the masses happy to avoid revolt. The Roman writer Livy described festivals as days of unbridled excess. And you feel it now. Meat stalls groan under piles of pork, bread baskets empty fast, and wine flows like the Tiber. Your sausage, spiked with fennel, is a festival special, juicier than the Subura's usual fare. You bite into it, grease dripping, and dodge a drunk who spills mulsum on your sandal. Food here is free or dirt cheap, often funded by emperors or rich patrons currying favor. You spot Icisha patties, Lucanicae sausages, and panis focaceus slathered with garum, all snatched up by eager hands. A vendor tosses globuli to kids, who squeal and scramble, honey smearing their faces. A quirky tidbit, during Saturnalia, Romans ate sigillaria, small fig-shaped cakes tied to the festival's gift-giving, believed to bring luck. You grab one, its sweetness cloying, and wonder if luck includes dodging a stomachache. Historians still argue whether these cakes were symbolic or just cheap treats to pacify the crowd. The festival's food is a step above the Subura's norm. Spices like pepper and cinnamon, usually elite, appear in common snacks, and meats plentiful, not stretched with gristle. You see a stall grilling whole pigs, their crackling skin carved for the masses, a rare treat for pulse-eating plebs. Wines everywhere, a pasca for the poor, mulsum for those flashing coins. You snag a cup of pasca, its sour kick cutting through the sausage's richness, and join a group cheering a street dancer. The Subura's risks haven't vanished. Flies buzz over meat, and lead-glazed cups glint in the torchlight, but the crowd's too merry to care. Joke number 1. In Rome, festival food's so good, you forget the flies until they're your side dish. The plaza's a social stew, blending classes in a way the Subura's stalls rarely do. You watch a senator, toga askew, share a loaf with a laborer, their laughter slurred by wine. A slave girl, crowned with ivy for Saturnalia, munches sigillaria beside her master, her grin defiant. Food fuels this unity: bread, meat, sweets, all passed hand to hand. Graffiti on a nearby wall reads, Io Saturnalia, next to a crude pig sketch, capturing the night's wild spirit. You overhear gossip about a priest caught stealing sausages, and laugh, realizing festivals let Rome's secrets spill as freely as the wine. But excess has a price. You notice a man retching behind a stall, his feast fighting back, and recall the health risks from the Subura's greasy diet. Festival food, richer than usual, strained stomachs used to pulse. Lead-laced wine and garum amplify the danger, and open sewers lurk just beyond the plaza's glow. You sip your pasca cautiously, dodging a splash from a juggler's spilled cup. Spoiled meat or bad water could turn this party into a city-wide sickbed, yet the crowd feasts on, hunger trumping fear. Joke number 2, in Rome, a festival's only as good as your stomach's truce with the garum. The night's rhythm is infectious: drums thump, lyres hum, and feet stomp in drunken dances. You finish your sausage, licking grease from your fingers, and grab a globuli from a passing vendor, its honey a sweet echo of the stall you visited earlier. Festivals were Rome's junk food peak, where food became celebration, not just survival. You see a vendor toss bread to the crowd, shouting, For Jupiter! And feel the city's heartbeat: wild, messy, alive. The Subura's glow burns brighter here, uniting rich and poor in a shared binge. As you sway with the crowd, the festival's joy wraps you tight. You realize food wasn't just fuel, it was Rome's soul, binding strangers in every sticky, greasy bite. The scent of roasted pork fades, but a new question tugs you forward. Did gladiators, Rome's ultimate heroes, eat this same junk? Joke number 3, forget VIPs. In Rome, a festival's real star is the guy who doesn't puke his sigillaria. You sway with the festival's fading rhythm, the honeyed globuli and pasca warming your veins, and slip back into the Subura's quieter streets. The crowd thins, but the scents of garum, bread, and meat linger, tying every stall and tavern together. As you munch a stray olive plucked from a passing vendor, you realize Rome's junk food wasn't just fuel, it was the glue that bound its people, from slaves to senators. In shared bites and greasy fingers, you pause near a Thermopolium, its dolia still steaming, and sink into the social magic of these quick meals, where food forged connections in a city of a million strangers. The Subura's glow feels softer now, its stalls and taverns humming with life. You lean against a wall, watching a group of laborers share a loaf, their laughter cutting through the night. Across the street, a soldier buys a skewer for a kid, who grins like it's Saturnalia every day. Rome's junk food pools, panis vocacious, sausages, globula wasn't just cheap, it was a unifier. Historians know that communal eating was central to Rome's social fabric, with texts like Plutarch's Moralia noting how shared meals, even humble ones, built trust across classes. You recall the festival's chaos, where rich and poor ate side by side, and see it here too: food leveling a city built on hierarchy. You pop your olive, its brine a sharp echo of the elite stall, and watch the Thermopolium's crowd. A freedman dips bread in garum, joking with the vendor, while a woman in a faded shawl shares pulse with her neighbor, their chatter warm. These stalls were Rome's living rooms, where gossip, deals, and friendships brewed over quick bites. A quirky tidbit: some Thermopolia had counters with built-in chat nooks, small alcoves where customers lingered to talk, like ancient coffee shop booths. You imagine squeezing into one, your bowl of lentils cooling as you swap Subura rumors. Historians still argue whether these nooks fostered community, or just gave drunks a place to nap. The Subura's food scene was democratic in a way its politics never were. You recall the pulse vendors' hollow-eyed crowd, the elite's dorm ice, and the festival's free-for-all: same city, same hunger. Stalls didn't care about your status. A coin or a barter got you a meal. You spot a man trading a clay lamp for a sausage, his grin triumphant, and a kid sneaking crumbs from a dropped libum. Food sparked moments of kiness: a vendor tosses an extra globuli to a beggar. A soldier shares his pasca with a stranger. Graffiti nearby reads, "Bread for all." A plea or a boast, etched beside a crude heart. Joke number 1. In Rome, love's cheap, but a free skewers true romance. Yet, the risks you've seen: lead pots, flies, spoiled meat, bind eaters too. in shared survival. You watch a laborer cough after a bite of pulse, his friend patting his back, and realize illness was a Subura constant, weathered together. Food stalls were where Romans faced life's raw edges: hunger, sickness, hope. You pass a meat stall, its brazier still glowing, and hear a vendor's cry. "Last skewers, fresh as Jupiter!" The crowd laughs, knowing fresh is a stretch, but they buy anyway. Food's trust, even if shaky, held Rome together. You recall the tavern's graffiti. "Lucius owes 3 asses," and smile, picturing debts forgiven over a shared loaf. The Subura's social glue wasn't just in eating but in the act itself: haggling, joking, passing bowls. You see a woman teach her kid to haggle for olives, her voice firm but fond, and a group of soldiers swap stories over Isicia, their hands greasy. These moments, fleeting as torchlight, built Rome's heart. You think of the grain dole, keeping pulse on tables, and festivals, where food erased divides. Junk food was Rome's equalizer, turning strangers into neighbors if only for a bite. Joke number 2. In Rome, a full stomach's nice, but a shared globuli makes you family. The street's rhythm pulls you along, vendors pack up, but Thermopolium glow on. You notice a man etching graffiti. "Subura eats, Subura lives," and feel its truth. Food stalls were Rome's pulse, feeding bodies and bonds. You finish your olive, its pit clicking in your mouth, and we've passed a bakery, its loaves cooling. The Subura's chaos is home now, its greasy, sticky connections wrapping you tight. As you move deeper, a new question tugs. Did gladiators, Rome's blood-soaked stars, eat this same bread and garum? Joke number 3. Forget fame. In Rome, you're nobody till you've spilled garum on your tunic. You drift through the Subura's fading glow, the olive's briny echo still sharp on your tongue, and feel the city's social pulse in every shared bite and laugh. The crowd thins, but the clatter of a nearby arena shouts, cheers. The clash of steel pulls you toward a new question. Did gladiators, Rome's blood-soaked heroes, fuel their fights with the same junk food you've been scarfing? You pause near a stall selling Isicia patties, their sizzle a faint mimic of the Colosseum's roar, and grab one, its warmth grounding you as you dive into the diets of these arena legends. Gladiators were Rome's rock stars, and you're about to uncover if their meals match the Subura's greasy glory. The stall's quieter now, its brazier casting shadows on the vendor's weathered face. You lean against the wall, biting into your Isicia, its peppery kick a far cry from the pulse you tried earlier. Gladiators weren't dining in the Subura's chaos, but their food wasn't far off: simple, hearty, built for survival. Historians know that gladiators, often slaves or prisoners, ate a high-carb diet to bulk up and endure wounds. As detailed in ancient medical texts like Galen's on the properties of foodstuffs, Galen described their meals as heavy on barley, beans, and bread, earning them the nickname barley men. Your Isicia feels like a treat compared to that, but you wonder if they ever sneaked a bite of Subura junk. You chew, the patty's grease coating your fingers, and picture a gladiator's mess hall. Their staple was Alicia, a barley porridge not unlike pulse, packed with lentils or chickpeas for protein. Bread, like the panis plebeius from the bakery, was a daily must, often dunked in olive oil or garum for flavor. Meat was rare: pork or goat, maybe once a week, closer to your skewer than the elite's dormice. A quirky tidbit. Gladiators drank a bonash potion, mixed with vinegar or wine, to boost calcium and heal fractures. You glance at your Isicia, hoping it's free of such supplements, and wince at the thought of chugging ash. Historians still argue whether this potion strengthened bones or just made gladiators grimace before fights. The Subura's food connects you to these fighters. You pass a Thermopolium, its dolia steaming with lentils, and imagine gladiators grabbing a quick bowl between training. Their diet wasn't glamorous: no garum, no beel or mulsum, but it was practical, designed to keep them alive in the arena. Archaeologists found gladiator barracks in Pompeii with kitchen scraps: barley, beans, fish bones matching the Subura's cheap eats. You spot a vendor selling garum-soaked bread, and realize gladiators likely used the same fishy sauce to spice their gruel. Your Isicia feels like a small rebellion, a taste of the street they rarely saw. The risks you've faced: lead pots, flies, spoiled meat where there's too. You notice the vendor's brazier, its lead pan catching drippings, and recall the toxic glaze on tavern cups. Gladiators ate from similar pots, their food cooked in barracks kitchens no cleaner than the Subura stalls. Parasites, common in pork or bad water, plagued them as much as any pleb. You chew cautiously, dodging a fly landing on your patty. And think of gladiators shrugging off such risks they face swords, not just stomachaches. Their diet built muscle but wore down teeth, just like the Subura's gritty flour did yours. Joke number 1. In Rome, gladiators ate pulse to survive. You eat it and pray for a dentist. The Subura's social glue touched gladiators too. You watch a group of laborers share a loaf, their chatter echoing the camaraderie of gladiator barracks, where men bonded over meals before facing death. Graffiti nearby reads, "Murmilla slays," a nod to a gladiator type, proof of their fame. Gladiators were fed better than slaves, their owners investing in their strength, but their food was still Subura-style bread, beans, garum, no frills. You imagine a gladiator sneaking a globuli from a festival, honey on his scarred hands, and smile at the thought of Rome's heroes craving the same sweets you did. The stall's rhythm slows vendors pack up, but the arena's distant roar lingers. You finish your Isisha, wiping grease on your tunic, and feel a kinship with those fighters. Their diet wasn't the Subura's feast, but it shared its soul, cheap, gritty, human. You pass a tavern, its wine-soaked laughter spilling out, and think of gladiators toasting rare victories with Pascha. The Subura fed Rome's heart, from plebs to warriors. And you're part of it now. As you move on, the scent of fresh bread wafts from a bakery, pulling you toward the legacy of Rome's junk food. Joke number 2. Gladiators ate barley to fight lions. You eat Isisha and fight flies. The Subura's glow wraps you, its food a thread tying you to Rome's past. You realize gladiators, like you, live bite by bite, their strength born from the same stalls you've roamed. Joke number 3. In Rome, a gladiator's secret weapon? A full stomach and a prayer no garum's gone bad. You step away from the gladiator's gritty world, the Isisha's spicy warmth fading as you weave through the Subura's quieting streets. The flicker of torches dims, but the sense of pulse, garum, and honey globuli linger, tying every stall to Rome's pulsing heart. As you brush a crumb from your tunic, you realize this junk food bread, skewers, greasy sweets did just feed a city. It shaped a legacy that echoes in today's pizza joints and food trucks. You pause at a final stall, its brazier barely glowing, and grab a panis vocacious, its crust crisp and oily. Biting into it, you trace Rome's fast food influence across centuries, feeling history in every chewy, greasy bite. The Subura's glow is a whisper now, its vendors packing up under a starlit sky. You lean against the wall, chewing your flatbread, and watch a laborer haul sacks of grain, his silhouette timeless. Rome's junk food was more than a meal, it was a model for urban life. Historians know that Rome's street food system, with Thermopolia and bustling markets, inspired later cities, from medieval taverns to modern street carts. The Roman writer Varro, in his De Lingua Latina, called markets the stomach of the city. And you see it now, the Subura's stalls fed 1 million people, their blueprints spreading across empires. Your panis vocacious, the great-granddaddy of pizza, is living proof. A simple dough, baked fast, still rules our midnight cravings. You tear off a piece, its olive oil sheen catching the fading torchlight, and think of Rome's reach. Thermopolia, with their steaming dolia, were the world's first fast food counters, their grab-and-go style reborn in today's burger stands and taco trucks. Garum's savory depth lives on in fish sauce and soy sauce, slathered on street eats from Hanoi to Los Angeles. Globuli paved the way for donuts, Isisha for burgers, and Pascha's sour tang echoes in cheap beers at food festivals. A quirky tidbit. Some Roman vendors used portable braziers, like ancient food carts, chasing crowds at chariot races or festivals, early proof that good food follows the hungry. You smile, picturing a Subura vendor parked outside a modern ballpark. Historians still argue whether Rome's fast food culture spread through conquest or just hitched a ride with traders and legions. The Subura's legacy isn't just in recipes, it's in connection. You recall the Thermopolium's chatnooks, the festival's shared loaves, and the gladiators' barley-fueled bonds. Rome's junk food built community, a model for today's food trucks where strangers laugh over falafel or fries. You watch a kid snatch a crumb from the ground, his grin echoing the Subura's hungry kids, and feel the timeless pull of food. The risks you faced: lead pots, flies, spoiled meat haven vanished. We've swapped them for preservatives and health codes, but the spirit's the same. Your panis vocacious is a bridge to now, its grit a taste of Rome's raw, messy soul. The stall's brazier sputters, and you finish your flatbread, crumbs dusting your tunic. The Subura's street's empty, but its essence lingers greasy, loud, human. You think of pizza slices grabbed on city corners, hot dogs wolfed down at fairs, and see Rome's junk food reborn. The Subura fed an empire, and its echo feeds us still, in every quick, sticky bite. Joke number 1, Rome invented fast food. We just added drive-thrus and regret. You wander past the Thermopolium, its dolia cold, and a bakery with loaves stacked for dawn. The Subura's influence is everywhere. Every food cart, every late-night diner carries its DNA. You recall the pulse vendor's weary crowd, the elite's dormice, the gladiator's barley, and realize food was Rome's heartbeat then and now. You toss a crumb to a stray dog, who snaps it up, and laugh at the cycle: hunger, survival, joy. The Subura's junk food was its story, written in grease and grit, and you've tasted every chapter. The street's quiet now, but you feel Rome's legacy in your full belly. Pizza joints, taco stands, even that corner kebab shop theory, all Subura kids born from stalls like these. You wipe your hands, blending into the night, and see the Subura's glow in every modern market's sizzle. Joke number 2, forget togas. Rome's real gift was the art of eating on the run. As you linger, the Subura's warmth wraps you tight. You've walked its alleys, dodged its flies, and savored its soul. Rome's junk food wasn't just food, it was life, shared in every bite, from pulse to pizza. The stars above seem to nod, and you wonder what Rome's next bite would taste like. Joke number 3, in Rome, every meal was junk. Today, we call it comfort food. The Subura's streets dissolve, their scents and sounds fading like a soft sigh. You're back in your quiet space, the fan's gentle hum a soothing lullaby. The torches dim, the crowd's laughter a distant whisper, and your eyelids grow heavy. Rome's junk food gritty pulse, greasy skewers, sweet globular carries you into a world of warmth and connection, where every bite told a story. Let the Subura's glow cradle you. Its smoky stalls a memory woven into your dreams. You've tasted its bread, sipped its wine, and walked its cobblestones, each step a thread of history. Now, let the city's hum fade, its chaos softening into peace. Sink deeper, wrapped in the Subura's embrace, where hunger met heart under starlit skies. Drift off, wanderer, with Rome's flavors lingering, a gentle promise of rest. Sleep deep, safe in the echo of a city that never stopped eating.